Welcome back to the Two Comma Club podcast. I am so excited about this episode today. I have our special guest, Rick Barker, with me. We met at an amazing event called I Do Epic Live, and since then we kind of hit it off, and he has an amazing story that he's going to share with you guys today. His entrepreneurial journey, making it to the Two Comma Club Award, and having a lot of other really cool stories that took place. So, Rick, if you wouldn't mind kind of telling people a little bit about where you started off in your entrepreneurial journey, that'd be awesome.
I think I was born an entrepreneur. I think that happened because I grew up poor. So I was always having to hustle, always having to find ways to make cash. I share with people that I didn't realize that I was different until junior high when the kids started pointing out that the clothes that I were wearing wasn't the popular clothes. You know, I wasn't wearing at the time. So I'm 59 years old. So at the time, Izod, Converse, you know, if you didn't have the good clothes, I shopped at Kmart. So I had like we called them the Skippy version of the Converse shoes. And, you know, my jeans were not Levi's and my shirts definitely were not Izod. But what I did is I always found ways to make money. And one of the first things that I remember us doing is we used to go down, it was called whittling for worms. So I grew up in Alabama. So you take a little tree, you would cut it, then you would saw down in it, and the worms would rise to the top. We'd scoop up the worms and put them in egg cartons and go down to the dock and sell them to the fishermen. So we were able to make money that way. We would go, you know, swim the golf course for ponds and pull out the golf balls and get those same egg cartons and put the golf balls in the egg cartons and sell those to the golfers. I remember during the winter, mistletoe, which would just form in these big bushels up in the tree, and we'd shoot the mistletoe down, and then all the girls would put the bows on it, and we'd sit outside the market and sell. So I've always found a way to make money. I didn't realize that it was my entrepreneurial journey was actually starting, you know, pre-teen years, but it's always allowed me to understand that if it's supply and demand, if they need worms, sell them worms. If they need golf balls, sell them golf balls. And I think that's what we forget sometimes is that, you know, find the right audience for the right product, and there can be a monetary transaction that takes place. Growing up, all I ever wanted to do was be on the radio. I heard Casey Kasem as a young kid and said, that's the guy that I want to be. And, you know, was working towards that and got derailed a little bit. Went to 7 schools in 10 different years, 7 schools, 10 different years. Found myself the new kid in school, so I was never really the leader. I always found myself as the follower. And unfortunately, my senior year in high school, I moved to California to live with my dad and found myself connected with the stoners, developed a drug addiction at that time, addicted to crack cocaine, took me down a very interesting path. And then on April 4th, 1989, I just got on my knees and I prayed. And I didn't pray to quit. I didn't pray that I would do less. I actually prayed that God would just let me die. I was like sick and tired of being sick and tired. And the next day I woke up and I haven't had a craving for cocaine since that day. But I didn't realize that alcohol was also a problem because I used to drink so I could drive. And then I ended up getting a couple DUIs, ended up doing jail time, was arrested on the air, had my dream of being on the radio, was arrested on the air. And then it was after doing 4 months in Santa Barbara County Jail that I realized that drugs and alcohol were just a symptom, that the real problem was me. And if I didn't figure that out, then I was just going to go down that path again. And it was at that time that I learned humility. I learned that I am no better than anyone else, even though I thought I was, you know, the number one DJ and Mr. Popular. It's like, no, the judge didn't think that. And God was I always say every time I need a lesson, God usually puts me in jail. Luckily, that hasn't happened since that day. That was the very last time many, many years ago. But it's allowed me to live a clean and sober life. And it's allowed me to always search for that servant's mentality. How can I serve others? And I got back on the radio, which was great. Built a country radio station, got hired by a record company, solved another problem, created the first radio tour where artists actually got paid, helped break some bands that went on to win Grammys. And in 2004, they hired me and introduced me to a then 15-year-old little girl named Taylor Swift and asked me to teach her the music side of the business. I had also coached when I got sober. Soccer had always been my passion. So I coached girls high school soccer. I always say that was God preparing me for Taylor because I speak teenage female. I didn't realize I was going to need that skill to help, launch one of the most influential teenagers in the world, but it came in very, very handy. And then in 2008, I shortly after the record company teaching her radio, her family asked me to be her manager. I did that for 2 years. It was an amazing time, but I realized that if I wanted to stay married and father to my kids and husband to my wife, that being gone 187 days a year wasn't going to cut it. So I gave my notice to Taylor and relocated my family to Nashville. And that's where that second part of the journey actually began. So I know I've unpacked a lot there. So if there's anything that you want to talk about or comment on, I don't want to be the guy doing all the talking because I love conversation as well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, you're doing great.
That's up to Taylor. Taylor's gone, then second half of life.
100%. Yeah, no, I think I got to hear your story on stage at I Do Epic Live, and I think that there was a lot of ups and downs that you've experienced in the journey of honestly being taken to where God is like trying to get you to go. And I'd be curious to dive into a little bit of like the mindset that you had during, the highs and the lows of what we've already unpacked, and kind of how you navigated and maintained that relationship with God throughout those years, if that makes sense.
It does. And what's real interesting for me is up until I was probably 25 or 26, it was either slow or fast. There was really no middle for me. And when I take the time to slow down is when I felt God was present. And when I always was go, 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 I was running at my own free will. And then I would kind of put God to the side. And it's like I never stopped believing, but I never felt it's funny because, God, if you just get me out of this, I'll never do it again. I was that guy. It's like, God, why is this happening to me? It was never God saying, Rick, you're making it happen to you. I kept you alive. It's like you said, let me die. I said, no, I'm going to keep you alive. But that doesn't mean that I've cured you of stupidity. And it doesn't mean that I've cured you of ego. And occasionally I'm going to have to remind you that you're not in charge. And once I truly believed that, and I think that was when I was arrested in 1995 on the air, and I knew that I was going to be spending some time in jail, that I said, something good's coming out of this. I got reconnected. I quit smoking. I started attending AA meetings in jail. So I went to jail 3.5 years sober. That's the funny part, is that, I avoided jail time in my drinking and using, besides for the couple DUIs where I was, 17 days here, 2 days here. But this time it was because I decided, since I wasn't drinking, I could probably drive. I didn't have a valid license. Got pulled over a couple times, driving on a suspended license. And then I just found a judge that wasn't as impressed with me as I was impressed with me. And he's like, dude, you don't get it. No means no. And that means no for you as well. And he sentenced me to 11 months. I ended up doing 4 of that. And that was one of the most humiliating times of my life. One, because my face was plastered on the television. Tonight, we'll tell you why Santa Barbara's #1 DJ is no longer on the radio. And then after I got off, I was 280 something pounds with no driver's license, riding a bicycle to the radio station to work. I was not getting anywhere near a car at that point. I was like, I'm going to get my driver's license back. I'm going to do this the right way. And that's what it was for me. I just think that it's like we may not know what the message is at that particular time, but I definitely heard it loud and clear for me is I was always a taker. I was like, all my relationships were, what was in it for me? What could you bring to me? Not how I could serve you. And it wasn't until jail that I left with a servant's mentality. And from that point on, everything, and I mean everything, changed. I met my wife. I got back into coaching. I got back on the radio. I got my health back. I mean, everything started going in the right direction when I just kind of said, okay, God, let me follow. I've tried the leading part and it's just not working. So let me do the follow part. And the follow part was where, because I had been addicted to drugs and running the streets from like 18 to 22, I never went to school. I never had a degree in anything, but I always had that entrepreneurial mindset. I always had that hustle. I wasn't afraid to try things. I wasn't afraid to max out a credit card, to explore. I wasn't afraid. And I think that's what happens a lot with entrepreneurs is, one, I think the term's just kind of thrown out there a lot, that people think just because they're a business owner, they're an entrepreneur. I think entrepreneur means something different. A small business owner is a small business owner. An entrepreneur, we're reckless at times. We're fearless at times. We're dumb at times, but we have this thing, and I think where I really got that entrepreneurial bug was when I just started learning from other people, seeing the journeys that they were on and that they didn't take the traditional route like I took. Those were the people that I were attracted to. I wasn't attracted to the person who got the degree and had the bit. I was like, where's the guy that hustled? Where's the guy that lost everything? That's kind of where I've always played. And a lot of times my wife didn't understand it, but I don't want to say she trusted. She may say now that she trusted, but there was a time I think she was a little concerned. She's like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? What kind of guy did I marry? It's like I'm a terrible employee, because I think like an owner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but, it is what it is, and it's worked out okay. We've been together 26 years, so.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to dive into there that I think is really relevant, and it was something that I remember you talked a lot on at the event, and you just touched on it a little bit there, was the idea of shifting from being a taker to somebody who's serving. Like, for somebody who is in that position and maybe doesn't realize it, what are some of the things that they might be able to acknowledge or notice in their life that is a sign that they are a taker, and then how do they make the transition into being more of a servant? Quick question for you. If you're listening to this show, it probably means you're interested in learning how successful entrepreneurs are growing their businesses. And while there's a lot of strategies we talk about on this podcast, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that growth often comes down to getting in front of the right people. The most powerful way that I've discovered to do that is with a podcast. That's why I created the Podcasting for Leads Challenge. It's a 5-day coaching experience where we'll design and launch a podcast that positions you as the go-to authority in your niche, creates unlimited content for your social media platforms, and consistently generates qualified leads for your business. So if you want to build a trusted personal brand that opens doors to speaking opportunities, have daily content scheduled to go out on every platform, and fill your calendar with qualified leads, then check out the Podcasting for Leads Challenge. The link is in the description down below. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
I think it's when you stop talking and start listening. When I would go in the room, I was the one leading the conversation because I was trying to find who had something that I could get, something to advance me. When I started being a better listener, then I could hear what your issue was and then say, I might be able to help you with that. I might be able to help you with that. I had conditional friendships, and I hate to say that. I mean, when I really got into my sobriety, I had a lot of people I had to make amends to, just because it's, one of the things is anyone you've wronged to better yourself. And there were a lot of people that I had wronged to better myself. And I would go and I'd say, listen, I really need to apologize. They're like, dude, I never took it that way at all. But I knew inside that my motives were what's in it for me. And I needed to go back and apologize for that. But what happened was I became a very good listener and realized that if you could solve other people's problems, they never asked what my degree was in. They never asked where I went to school. And one of the first problems I solved goes back to that radio tour. What happened is all these record companies, when I was the program director at this country station, were bringing these artists through. And I just started asking questions, and it comes to find out that For a lot of new artists, they don't get an opportunity to play. It's very expensive. The record companies pay to take them out to meet all the different radio stations. That goes against the account of the artist. So if the artist doesn't sell records, the account doesn't go down, the artist could get dropped. So I just found a couple people that would allow me to ask them questions. I took that information and I went and I created things for them. And that's kind of the same way how I ended up with Taylor. You know, I had zero management experience. I had never managed an artist before, but she came to me and she's talked about this in a magazine article one time. They're like, why did you choose Rick as your manager? She said, I told him I wanted a gold record. And he said, great, let's go meet 500,000 people. And I just did the simple math. But what I realized at that time was because I thought different, because I'm weird. That's what I tell everybody. My license plate on my Jeep says, I am weird. You know, and I always tell people weird wins because most people aren't willing to do it. And I'm all about being weird. She wanted to be weird too because she didn't want to do what everybody else wanted to do. She couldn't take that path because she wasn't as good a vocalist as Faith Hill or Carrie Underwood or any of those folks. She was young. So she wasn't going to be playing the bars. She wasn't going to be in the clubs, taking that route like a lot of the male country artists could do. So we just sat there and said, what's the easiest way for us to get to people? And at that time, it was MySpace. So while everyone else was avoiding it, we went all in on it. And boy, did it change everything. And that was one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned is I've always been an early adopter of technology. I've always looked at it as how can I get in front of as many of the right people as fast as possible for as little as possible. And social media was that. And while most marketers were using it to promote, I was using it to serve. I would go on and do live Q&As. I'd sit down, call them the fireside cigar sessions. As you know, I'm a big cigar guy. So I'd sit out by my patio with a fire, with a cigar, answering people's questions on Facebook Live. And then when Instagram went live, I started doing Instagram Lives. And then there was an app where I could be live on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the same time. So I started doing that. And I just started going out without anything to sell, building relationships, building rapport, because someone said something to me one time. They were like, Rick, I really appreciate you not always trying to sell. I said, well, let me correct you. If my mouth is moving and anything is coming out, I'm selling. I just may not be asking for the order at that particular point. I'm earning the right to make you an offer. And that changed everything for me because they were like, wow, if this is what this guy's giving away, I can only imagine what's inside the course. So I would use those lives to build my credibility and then invite people to a webinar or, you know, a virtual sales letter or whatever at the time. And that's kind of how my whole journey started, was me just answering people's questions about the music business.
Yeah. So it sounds like you adopted the servant mentality and you got to learn firsthand working with Taylor and all of your other radio experiences, kind of how to get into the marketplace and really like get a good foundation built to have great success within it. And then you took that and you started to adopt it to more of a broad audience, so to speak, more than just, you know, the one person that hired you to be the person running their show. So help me understand where that transition started to take place. So you just ended things with Taylor and then you started off on your own, and where did things
not
go?
really. So when I left Taylor, I moved my family to Nashville and I started consulting for record companies. And I had never been a consultant. Matter of fact, when I got offered my first job as a consultant, I had to pause, go to the bathroom, call my wife and say, go on Yahoo and type in, what does a consultant do? I had no idea what was being offered. But what was happening is I was starting to see what was going on at other labels besides the label that I was at. I was starting to see the dysfunction in the music industry. I always tell people, I say, listen, your rewards are not in direct proportion to the work that you put in. Unlike most traditional businesses, you can't throw money at it to solve the problem. Usually you can hire people, buy equipment, whatever the case may be. And your rewards just aren't in direct proportion. It's just the way that it is. And there's no shortage of people that can sing. The internet showed us that. before the internet, it was like if they were on the radio, those are who the artists were, and everybody else was just a garage band or, your local band that played. Now, all of a sudden, you're seeing there's all this talent. But at that point, this was right around 2010. All these dads started showing up to Nashville with a blank check and a teenage daughter willing to write me a check and pay me whatever I wanted to make their daughter the next Taylor Swift, because they thought I was the magic pill. They thought her being a teenager was the magic pill. They thought because her dad had money that was the magic pill. And no one ever talked about the work. So there were some colleges that taught music degree. And I started speaking at some of these colleges, and I realized that they were just teaching theory. And the reason that they could only teach theory is because the business and everything was changing so fast that every time you replace a book, you have to get reaccredited. So they weren't as in tune as I was at that point. So I'm like, let me go see what's out there on the internet. And I went, how to get a record deal, how to get a publishing deal. I started typing in all these keywords, and nothing was showing up that was actually teaching. And I met a guy at church, his name's Mike Smith, and Mike had created a course where he was teaching Christian music managers how to be managers. Anybody that was interested, he was in the Christian music space. And I said, Mike, I would like to do that for the music business side of things. He goes, have you ever heard of Jeff Walker? I said, no. He says, you should look up this guy, Jeff Walker. And I look up Jeff and I see the product launch formula and I give my email and I start watching the videos. And then I'm like, okay. And then I heard about this guy, Brendan Burchard, and I started, learning from Brendan Burchard. And I said, okay, I don't have a course, but I have all this knowledge and all this information, but I also have all these relationships. What could I do to create something? So I decided to host a live event, Music Industry Blueprint, MIB, that's my company. I was going to call it the Music Industry Blueprint Live. I was going to invite people that most folks couldn't get access to, people that worked at record labels, publishers. And I went to these people and I said, listen, I'll pay you $500 for an hour of your time. They were like, you're going to pay us? I said, well, yeah. And they're like, dude, no one pays us. They just want us to come speak. I said, look, if I pay you, you show up. I said, plus, I think I'm going to record it. I don't know what I'm going to do with the recordings. And they're like, no problem. Give us the They took the $500. They showed up. I went and I rented a little place here, charged $97 a ticket, sold 200 tickets, had one little camera set up in the back of the room, no microphone on it, no nothing, just a regular. And I just shot the wide angle of the room, taught for 2 days. And I said, hey, I've got these videos. If anybody wants them, $500, just give me your email and I'll put them together and I'll send you this thing. And that's how I did it. I didn't have a membership site. I didn't have a funnel. I didn't have really kind of anything at this point. And then when I went to my first Jeff Walker event, they were like, wait, you're selling courses and you don't have a landing page or a website for it? I said, no, I do these live events and tell everybody I have these videos. If you want to buy them, just give me your email and I'll, PayPal me $500 and I'll give you access. They go, there's an easier way to do this. And I'm like, what? They're like, you're the social media guy. You want to help more people? I said, well, I'm just trying to get people to Nashville to come see me live. They're like, we got you. So that's when I went and created my first real product. Brendan taught me how to do that. Jeff taught me how to set it up to sell it. At the time, I think I had I've got Kajabi. I had a WordPress website that I built myself. I mean, that was my first launch into this whole thing. But what I started realizing is that I still had zero structure, but I had this willingness to learn. And that's when I started investing in coaching. And that's when I started getting mentorship. And I can't tell you the number of times that my credit card was billed for $9.97 or $19.97 because if I needed to know it, I needed to learn it fast. So I'd always buy the courses and I would use the courses and do the courses. It wasn't until later I realized a lot of people bought courses and never did anything with them, and I could never understand that. But hey, people have bought courses for me that they've never used now. I learned that not everybody's into it. But yeah, that was my first deep dive into the courses. And Russell didn't come into play and ClickFunnels until later where I had already hired Jason Fladlin to help me do a webinar, and Ryan Levesque had helped me do a survey. And all of a sudden I heard about this thing called ClickFunnels, and you just throw it up and it pops out. And I bought it and tried it and went to my first funnel hacking live and fell in love with the community and saw these people walking along getting these plaques. And I said, I want to get one of those plaques. And I did, I set it up and did what I was told. I became a part of his coaching, and it's just I'm always a student. To this day, I'm still a student. I mean, I just bought a course an hour before I saw you because I'm doing more speaking now, as you know, ventured into the speaking world. And I've been working with Bo Eason on my storytelling, but I want to get better with my stage presence and my mannerisms. So, Vin Gong had a deal. So I picked it up, and, every night now I'll sit out on the patio, I'll have a cigar, and I'll learn how to become a better speaker and learn what to do with these crazy hands and things like that. So I'm always a student, which I love.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that student mentality is one that you can never turn off. If you want to get every drop of life out of life, then you need to be always learning and staying on top of that. So that's fantastic. Man, there's a lot to unpack there. So it sounds like originally you started off with like the course concept, and then when did the webinars come into play, and what were they about?
So the webinars for me, because I was the social media guy, because everybody knew me with Taylor, one of the first courses that I created outside of the Music Industry Blueprint, which was just recordings of a live event, was social media for music. So I bought a boatload of URLs, which I know all of you watching are probably guilty of, and you probably have a file folder full, but I got social media for music, and I started teaching people how to use social media to build relationships. And that became a niche. And at about that same exact time, I was invited to become the social media mentor for the contestants on American Idol. So I had some really live case studies. I did the first ever Facebook Live with a musician from the American Idol set. I always told him, I said, it's a singing competition until the show goes live. Then it's a vote getting competition. And let me show you how to take advantage of this $10 million commercial you're going to get, because only one of you is going to win it. But what are you going to do with this audience that you built? So I got really good at building audiences, nurturing audiences. So what I would do is that was the first webinar I did, was the social media for music. And I can't even remember the title of it, but I invited people, and then I made a $97 offer. And on top of that was my upsell, because I had to have an upsell afterwards, is I got really good at running ads early on. So I had this ads amplifier for music, which was my 147 upsell. And that's what I actually got my 2 Comma Club award with, was the $97 product with a 147 upsell. And it was right before COVID, when everyone was at home and they're like, wait, there's this guy that teaches us how to go live. And I had created this thing called the virtual tip jar, showing people how to put PayPal and Venmo links in the comments to get people to send them money. And everyone was sitting at home. So I was doing a webinar every night. Every night I would just drive people. I would run ads to get them there. I would go on Instagram Live, get them to DM me. I would send them invites, and I was inviting everybody. And we did almost $1.6 million in 18 months with those 2 courses. And there was, while I was home and everybody else was home, I started doing some group coaching, some one-on-one coaching, a little bit higher ticket. The highest ticket that I had at that point was like a $5,000 group coaching program, but it all adds up after a while. And the next thing you know, you get to fill out your form, and congratulations, and boom, you're walking across the stage getting your 2 Comma Club award. And I always tell people, I shared this with Russell because he was at that same event that we were at. And I asked him, there's a picture of me holding Taylor's plaque, which is $1 million for platinum, and me holding my 2 Comma Club. And I said, with this Taylor plaque, it was me helping one person achieve their dream of $1 million. With this 2 Comma Club, this was me helping tens of thousands of people achieve their dream. And I said, Russell, how many of your 2 Comma Club members are there? He goes, over 3,500. I said, how many of them also have one of those? He goes, just one. I said, okay. I ended up texting him the picture. I said, feel free to use it however you like. But that was something I was very proud of, because I started seeing the results of people actually doing the work. But I also started seeing the results of people not doing the work as well, going, it's like same course. It's like school, same book, same teacher, same hours, one valedictorian, same studios, same people play on the records, same radio stations, one Taylor Swift. It's like everyone's journey is not going to be the same. And I had to get over that too, because it would frustrate me. It really would, because my mentors would say, you don't use enough testimonials on your website. I said, if I'm going to take credit for the work that someone else did, do I also have to take credit when someone else doesn't do the work? It's the same product. And they're like, we've never thought about it like this. I said, I will never take credit for the work that someone else did. Now, I will say I shared with them something, but they did the work. And that goes back to the humility. Once again, it's like no one's going to put crappy testimonials on their website. Half of them are fake anyway. So it's like, why do I need to brag? It's like, hey, come in, check it out. If it works, it's the best stuff that's out there. I know, because I've used it. I've built it. No one teaches it the way that I teach it. If you spend $100, do the work. If you don't, I'm not concerned that you lost $100. That's on you. That's not on me. I gave you everything. And I used to take that personal, John. It was like I'm like, gosh, why? And then I'm like, wait a minute, why am I concerned? I upheld my end of the deal. I gave them the best information possible, all in one location. Screen share, click, copy, paste. If they don't do the work, that's on them. That's not on me. And it took me a while to really get through that. I was, at one point, I wanted to walk away from the musicians, because I'm like, I've got entrepreneurs now coming to me because all I teach is get the right product in front of the right person and make the right offer. That's universal. That's just business. And I'm like, if the musicians aren't going to take me serious because I'm valuing something so low, and it was Myron Golden who said something to me. He says, Rick, the biggest mistake that you made is you came out of the gate too cheap. And I'm like, but Myron, he goes, don't but. He said, here's the thing. You came out too cheap. I said, Myron, I didn't say but. I said, Myron, I wanted to make it as accessible to as many people as possible. He said, what you did in the meantime, Rick, is you devalued your brand. You launched the career of Taylor Swift. You worked with American Idol. You were the one that the record companies were paying multiple six figures for to come consult them. You're the Ferrari, but you're discounting yourself like a Volkswagen. He goes, Ferraris are never on sale. He said, and that's why people that are less talented with less credentials than you are making more money, is because they're just telling people are buying it because they think, well, it's more expensive. It must be better. And that took me a long time to understand that I could have multiple levels, as Russell calls it, the value ladder. As long as, for myself, as long as I felt there was a free option, because I grew up poor. So I know that not everyone who has hunger has money. That I know. I do not, it's like, if you want it bad, no. There's some people that live in countries where I used to have kids that would come on and would send me an email and say, hey, I didn't get to hear the last part of the webinar because the store that I was hanging outside of still in their Wi-Fi closed and they turned the Wi-Fi off. And I'm like, I'm sending that person my course for free because that person shows me they're interested in it. So I had to have that free level and be okay that that's all they could afford at that time. I had to have that other level. And then I also had to have that higher level for those people that were in a position to take it. And I had to stop feeling guilty. And that was really hard for me for a long time because I was like, well, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I wish I would have learned that earlier. And those that pay attention. And yes, there are those that can't afford to pay that will also pay attention. But the majority of people, if they don't see value in it, they never use it. And that's what Myron was trying to explain to me. He said, instead of you getting mad because they're not using it, he goes, you didn't give them any value to use it. It was like, it's only $100. I only spent $100. And I had to tell someone one time, I said, they were arguing with me for something. I said, listen, let me just be straight up with you. Your $97 will not have impact on me whatsoever. I will still be in the same tax bracket. I'll still have the same problems in my life. I said, now, 1,000 of you decide to come in and spend $97. That's a whole different story. But what I'm going to give you will change your life. Your $97 isn't going to change mine. And I'm not saying that to be, and I tell them, I'm not saying, they go, no, I get it. I understand it. And that's when I learned a very valuable lesson, that you can also be honest with the right people. And instead of trying to sell everyone, just be straight up and say, look, I'm going to make an offer at the end. For a lot of you, it's going to be the right thing. For some of you, it's not. For some of you, the timing's not going to be right. But you stick with me for the next hour, and I'll make sure that you've got tools that you could go and use. Fair? Fair. And people were like, no one ever tells us at the beginning that they're going to sell us, even though we know we're going to be sold at the end. So I started reversing it. And that honesty and that not trying to fool people and yes, and you've got two off, because we all learned from the same people. So at the time that I got my 2 Comma Club award, there were 14 of us in the music space that walked that stage that year. So that meant at least 14 of us were doing the webinars the same exact way. The landing pages looked the same way. I said, oh crap, how do I differentiate myself in this group? And that's when I got weird. I said, okay, I'm going to tell them there's an offer. I'm going to tell them I'm not for everyone. I started spending just as much money retracting the wrong person to the webinar as I did attracting the right person, because I knew if I got the right people on the webinar, it would be a great experience and my conversions would be higher. And it ended up being that way. I didn't want a whole bunch of non-qualified people occupying the chat, trying to share their Instagram to get followers and all that. And as a host, you can't help but look and go, because we're still human beings. So I started making sure that I got the right people, and I pushed away the wrong people. That was one of the best decisions that I made, was just by telling everyone. I say, I'm like sushi. I'm an acquired taste. I'm not for everyone. If you want to be famous, I'm the wrong guy. If you think that money can fix it, I'm the wrong guy. If you want to know what work needs to be done and how to get that work done in the shortest period of time, I got you. That's who I'm for. And it worked. And it worked well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that everything you said there is like phenomenal. And the story of really recognizing the right and wrong people, your value, understanding that, people are in different places in life, and how you can still be a servant, but part of serving is also like understanding the value. And I think that this is probably something you could speak to. Like, have you experienced it where, you have that $97 product, but then you have the $5,000 product, and the energy that people bring in terms of like leaning in to extract the value is different, right?
It is, but I also learned a lesson too with that not all money is the right money, and just because someone could afford the $5,000, are they really the person you want to be able to help? And how I learned that in the music side is it was these older artists that had jobs as lawyers or whatever, and they were these weekend rock star warriors, but no one had ever told them their music wasn't good. So a big part in my higher price courses is I'm helping you build ads, and we're building funnels, and we're getting eyeballs on your product. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm turning on attention to something that's not very good. And that also so I've learned a lot of very valuable lessons. It's like, not all money's the right money. Just because someone could afford to spend time with you, does that mean you want to spend time with them? And time is that one situation that we could never get back. And it wasn't until probably 3 years ago, I had bought a course from Dan Henry. I'd paid his $10,000, and I was going to start talking to people, and I'm a student, so I would follow the script, and I would do the script, and I would do this. And I realized at that point, I said, you know what? I need a much stronger application process before I get them to the call. Because all I was doing was trying to get people on the call, see if they qualified for the money. If they had the money, knock it down. And it was working really well. I was doing my own calls. But what I realized is that I wasn't qualifying them well enough. And so I went, and I can't remember who I hired at that point. As I said, I need a stricter application process. I really need to narrow it down. And I think it was Ryan, because we put him in buckets, and it was like, okay, if they score this, okay, you're not quite ready yet, but here's the best place for you to start. And some people would take offense to that. And that's okay, because they were never going to be a good person for me anyway. So when I really started qualifying people better and making sure that no matter how they scored, I had something for them. But then when I get them on a call, I could nail these calls down at 15 minutes. It was like I did all the pre stuff. I'd listen before I ever listened to their music. I had some, I call them my realistic expectation questions. It's like if they answered anything that set off a red flag, I never got on the phone with them. It didn't matter. It wasn't until they checked all the boxes that then I would go listen to the music, because it didn't matter how great the music was if they weren't coachable or if they felt they were farther along than they were. And it took me about a year to really hone in on that application process. And if there's any advice that I can give, it's be okay to say no to some of the money. Because your mental health, your peace of mind, your excitement, it comes through when you're especially if you're coaching online. And it's like if you're going to have one bad apple in that group and it's going to bring the group down and it's going to bring you down, doesn't matter if they can spend $50,000. That will kill your group and it will kill any momentum that you have. So get real strict on who gets your time, who gets you on the call. If you're using a sales team, make sure that these people go through a rigorous application process before they're even told about that higher ticket offer to be able to get you. And it may cost you some money in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to make more and you're going to have better groups because of it. You're going to have a better community because of it. And that's a very valuable lesson, because everybody would always say, oh, join the Facebook community, or hey, with this one, everybody gets a group coaching call and I'll do questions and I'll take your questions and answer them. And I would get the same people every week asking the same question that they had asked the week before. And people in the comments say, how many times does he have to tell you your website sucks? Get it better. Just because he told you your music wasn't good, you can't fix it in a week. It's like being fat and going to the gym for 1 week and then coming back and doing a weigh-in and thinking you're going to be 20 pounds less. It takes time. And then all the good artists stop showing up, and I would reach out and I'm going, hey, Rick, look, bro, I'll just buy your one-on-one time when I need you. I don't have an hour to sit there and have you listen to you tell somebody and somebody's going to argue with you for an hour. I would rather go build my social media following. And I'm like, I have retracted the wrong people now, not the right people. These are the people I wanted in, and they were now being retracted, because it's like, is this the type of people Rick attracts? Is this the type of community that he's building? So quality over quantity became a very valuable conversation that I started having with me and anyone that I did business with. I said, look, I'll spend more time to get less people that are qualified. I just can't it's not a numbers thing for me anymore. It's the right numbers, the right people, where I feel good about what it is that I'm doing, knowing that this person's got the right music, they got the right mindset, they got the finances, because I'm going to teach you how to run ads, and ads aren't free. And the only way to grow fast is to get eyeballs on it as fast as you can. That's going to take somebody else's audience, your audience, borrowed audience. We've all learned those things. It's like, so that's where I had to go, okay, no matter how good they are, if the work ethic isn't there, if the mindset isn't right, all of my courses now, the very first module is always, and I don't even do courses anymore, I do workshops now, but the very first time we get together is all about mindset. It has to be. It has to be.
Yeah, I think it's super important, and talking about pre-qualifying people properly before letting them in your programs and all of that. One of my favorite things of doing this podcast is hearing the patterns, and I heard that before from Victor Damasio on episode number 24. And one of the other things that you touched on made me think of another one of the episodes was with Dr. Travis Ziegler, and he was talking about like your business isn't boring enough. If if you want to be successful, like you need to have the boring business. And one of the periods of time that I was playing out in my mind as I was listening to your story was like, what was it like when you were doing the webinar every week consistently? Because I imagine it's the same content and the same process every week. How did you navigate?
It was until I flipped the script, because I wanted to be different. So what I did was I saw Myron Golden had a vibe board. So I shifted from the traditional webinars with the slides to me teaching for an hour. And it was still quote unquote called a webinar at that time, the master class, the workshop. We hadn't shifted to that thing yet. And then that's when I started saying, you know what? One, nobody wants another course. They want the results the course can give them. The fastest way for me to get them to the result is to teach them something that they can instantly put into use. And then they say, hey, if you want to go deeper with me, hey, here's what I do. They got a chance to see what I did, not that I could just read slides. And I was getting bored doing the same one. So everyone was different. It was like, even though we would teach the same concepts, every question I bring people on, I use people as live examples. I really started, that's where what my superpower is that I can simplify what other people find complicated, and I can do it in a way that while someone's learning, they don't feel that they're being put down for not knowing. So I started leaning into what my strengths were. My strengths are storytelling. My strengths are coaching. My strengths are, hey, let's figure it out. Let's do this. So when I saw that, I point over here because I have my vibe board. I ordered a vibe board. I'm like, Myron, I'm getting one of the boards. And I saw Dan Henry do a dry erase board. I said, somebody else, I said, that's how I'm going to do it. I can teach like that. Not a lot of people can. A lot of people can only read the slides and make the offer. They're great presenters, but they're not great teacher presenters, if that makes sense. And that's okay. Everyone has different skill sets. So I had to, once again, it was a little weird where I just would bring people up, and I didn't have all the fancy and I didn't need all this different stuff. That's why I could never be Adam Ivy in the music space on YouTube, because Adam was so freaking good at it and he had all these things. And I'm like, okay, instead of me trying to be Adam, why don't I just be Rick? And I'm not going to get as many views as Adam, and I'm okay with that. I'll just do my thing. And then now that if they want Adam, that's where I go. I go to Adam. If they want it perfect, polish, spot on, all the different cuts and edit, he's your man. If you want raw, you just want somebody who's going to fumble and mess up a bunch of stuff, that's me. I just had to get comfortable being not perfect. And I felt that trying to be perfect was costing me money. Trying to be perfect was being hypocritical to me telling artists you don't have to be perfect. And then I had to explain to the people that I was spending money with to coach me on how to be me. Don't try to coach me on how to be another version of you. And they were okay with that. Because one of the best examples with Ryan Levesque. Ryan, at the time, he thought I was doing too much video. And he told me that, and he said it to the group. And he said, Rick, why are you on screen so much? Why isn't it more just voice like we've all been taught? I said, Ryan, I'm in an industry where there's a lack of trust. And if someone can't see you, I don't think they can trust you. He said, let's test it. So we did. I did it exactly like he did. I did it exactly like I wanted to. We ran traffic to both. We did a true test. And one day he was at one of his big conventions and somebody texted me from the audience. I had to leave early. I said, hey, Ryan's about to use you as an example. He said that Rick Barker uses video way too much. And I just smiled because I knew what was about to happen. They thought Ryan was going to bust my ass right there in front of everybody. So Ryan said, here's what I told Rick. Here's what I wrote. Perfect. Beautiful. Here's what Rick did. As you can see, not so perfect, not so beautiful. You guys ready for the results? They said, yeah. He said, Rick's outperformed mine. He said, because Rick knows his audience. And I want you guys to use that as a lesson. We're going to give you the best things that we know of at the time, but you all aren't the same. Test it. And what Rick explained to me was, and that's what I said, if you're in one of those markets where trust is a big deal, People want to feel that if they could see you and look you in the eyes, they can trust you. And that was such a valuable lesson. One, knowing that that was the right mentor for me because he didn't have to be right. And he wasn't trying to be right. And there's a lot of those gurus out there and a lot of those people that want a bunch of little clones and want a bunch of little, and that's how I've been blessed to be able to get the right mentors in my life that know how to bring out the best me and not try to make me the next somebody else just because that's what happens to be working in this space. And we all see it right now. Everything's agentic AI. And I'm like, okay, cool. My book's called AI for Humans. You know, that's where I'm at right now. Is it's like I'm speaking at colleges, I'm speaking with corporations. I've transitioned. I slowly took myself out of the music space. I wrote my book, Music Business for Parents. That's on automation. And now I'm going out teaching people once again. I was an early adopter of AI, and now I'm teaching people how to use it as a thought partner and not as the end all be all. It's like, no. The biggest mistake I think people make with AI is they tell AI what they want from it. And if you're just going to say, make me a marketing calendar, and you're working at a business, you're replaceable. But if you say, ask me what you need from me in order to create this, now it needs you. And now you're not replaceable. Now it still needs you. So I'm really teaching people how to use it as a human and how to use it to help them eliminate the tasks that they get tired of doing so they can focus on the parts of their business that they really enjoy and really love doing. And that's been a blast.
Yeah.
An absolute blast.
No, that's fantastic. And I like the sentiment of the idea of bringing it in as like a thought partner. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit more?
Right. So there's a book called The AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods. And I was using AI before I read his book. I was using it like everyone else. It's like I manage a pop artist. Their audience are young girls. We need 30 days of content. Give me Instagram reel ideas, TikTok reel ideas, things like that. And it would put it out and it would look the same as whoever else asked them for the same exact thing. So then I started asking it. I said, okay, I need you to understand more about me. Interview me. Give me questions that I can answer to help you better understand who I am. And it started doing it. And all of a sudden, now they just weren't a pop artist. They were an art. I make music for young girls who feel blank. I'm like, ooh, okay, this is different. This is very unique and different. So then I started talking to it. I said, so here's where I'm at right now. Like last night, I did a clarity session with a guy. I said, okay, I'm sitting here with Justin. Justin is a former YouTuber, 8 million. But I think Justin's more than that. I think Justin doesn't quite know where he wants to go right now. I said, I want you to take on the role of our strategist, and I want you to interview Justin one question at a time, building off of the next to get a better understanding of who he is. And it started giving him questions. He would answer them. It would come back. It would build off the other one. So that's what I mean. Use it as a thought partner. Instead of you telling AI what you want from it, ask it, hey, what do you need from me? Let's talk about this. If I'm trying to accomplish this and I've got this amount of time to do it, what are the things that I should be focusing on right now? And what are the things that I should not? And help me get to that. Now I'm using it as a thought partner. And that has absolutely changed the game for me and the people, that I work with. It led me to be offered a job as a CMO of a $100 million life insurance financial company. And I don't know, I have insurance. That's about the extent of what I know about insurance. But when you know how to do something, and people always laugh, they're like, dude, I've never seen anyone talk to it like that. And I'll say, don't BS me, don't patronize me, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. I'll always end most my prompts with, does that make sense? And it will come back and it'll say, yes, it makes sense, but I think what you were trying to say or where you wanted to go, is that correct? I'm like, oh yeah, it's a clarity thing for me too. And I was on stage at a college with these kids taking their resume and in 10 minutes making them sound like, holy crap, that's me? I'm like, yes, that's because it asked you the right questions. And I started sitting there going, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to create these aha moments for people. I don't want people to be afraid of it. I want people to say, how can I use it to get my time back? if I don't understand something, help me understand this. Don't give me the answer. Help me get to the answer. Help me understand what I'm missing. You know, it's a real funny story is my daughter's fiance is in the Coast Guard right now, and he's going through boot camp. And he's got one more week left, and it's been brutal for all these kids. We're on this Facebook group, and we're seeing people are getting reverted and all this stuff. So she's Miss Perfect. So she's got her, you know, her master's in social work. So she'll type really pleasant questions into chat, and it'll give her really pleasant answers back. So yesterday I said, hey, why is it that Coast Guard boot camp is so brutal? That's all I said to it. It says, well, here's why. Because in the Coast Guard, they immediately go out. If you can't handle this, and you can't handle this, and you can't handle this, and you can't handle this, someone's going to die, because you may be set 2 weeks into your job. You may be out rescuing people off of a boat. You may be boarding. And I'm like, and it came back and it spoke to me like me. And that's when I've been teaching people. It's like, here's how you use it. Let it get to know you. Let it get to know your tone. Let it get to know your voice. And don't settle with what it gives you. Challenge it. Okay, is this the best you got? You know, sometimes I'll say, okay, that's good. Make it suck less. You know, and it'll go, okay, and it'll fix it up. Or I'll say, hey, we're going down a rabbit hole. Only one more question. We've thought about this long enough. Now we need to take action. Gotcha, Rick. Let's jump in. So my wife will laugh sometimes. She's like, who are you talking to out on the patio? I'm like, me and Chat. We just have our conversation. And then I'll go to Chat. I'll say, hey, I'm now going to move this over to Claude. Write me a prompt to move it to Claude. Okay, here's your prompt. Boom. Hey, I need to go do deep research. I'm going to go to Gemini. Okay, boom. So I use all the different tools. It's just, I use Chat as my thought partner. I use Claude for more of my agency stuff, tasks, checking emails, organizing things for me, and then deep research. Gemini has access to Google. Can't get any deeper than that as far as going and getting information. So I use them for a bunch of different things, and I've been having such a blast with it.
Yeah, I think the stories that you shared of helping people with like clarity calls and stuff at the event was really valuable. And I'd love to hear kind of like what it is that you have in terms of the offerings that you're offering in the marketplace at this time.
So what's funny is I'm really not offering the marketplace anything, except I do have a book that will be out in September. It's called AI for Humans. So depending on when you're watching this, I would love for you to go grab a copy. If you would like the first draft, you can just email Rick at Rick Barker. Tell me that you're a listener of John's from the podcast, and I'll send you an advanced copy of the first draft. So here's what I've been doing. So I read a great book called From Strength to Strength, and the concept is finding peace, happiness, success in the second half of your life. And what I realized is that I no longer want to build courses. I no longer want to just serve one community. But what I want to do is I want to help these college kids that are wondering if their degree is even going to mean anything anymore. Are there going to be jobs for them? And I want to help people that are currently in the workforce. I want to help leaders really give their employees an opportunity to be able to shine. So what I've done is I've started going out and speaking, and I'll go in and I ask two questions always. One, what's the biggest bottleneck in your business? And they tell me. And then I figure out where we go from there. And then I'll say, if your business were to grow by 30%, what's the first thing that would break? And I make sure we have that fixed first. Because a lot of people say, I just need leads. Great. Do you have a way to take those leads? Do you have a way to set up those calls? Be careful what you ask for? Because everyone's hearing the latest term of, here, we'll build agents, and agents will flood your inbox with qualified leads. And well, a good agent is going to break your business if your foundation isn't set. So I'm big on going in, hey, here's what you're going to hear everybody else talk about. Why don't we get these things done first? So what I do is that I go in, corporate America is now allowing me the opportunity to go to these colleges at the same time. So a company will bring me in. I'll spend one day with the leader of the company, a couple hours, really understanding their philosophy of the business, why the business. A lot of it's mom and pop legacy buildings, not publicly traded companies, but private companies. And then I go and meet with their staff the next day for a couple hours, and I get to interview them, and I get to ask questions and find out, what are the things that you wish you had access to? What are the things that you're afraid to say in front of your boss? Because a lot of people are afraid to ask for help, thinking that that's going to get them replaced. And no one should ever have to go to a job and work in fear. And a lot of times it's just they don't have the right tools. So that's what I've become, is the person who comes in, and I always say I help leaders find clarity when the stakes are high. So I'm doing it at the college level. I'm doing it at the corporate level. It's so fresh and so new. It's like I'm still doing it with people. I did it with a guy last night. I met at an event, and I said, hey, I'm wanting to explore different verticals, and it seems to be working in all the verticals, which is really cool. And it's just by me asking really good questions, letting people interview them, instead of saying, hey, go write down all your problems. It's like, no, we interview each other. I'll either record it in Applaud, any kind of AI recording device where I can come back, take the transcript, then I'll put that into chat. And then I have my, way of going in and really extracting. And then I'll diagnose the owner side, the company side. I bring it all together and I say, okay, here's what I've discovered. We need training over here. We could probably put a couple AI agents over here. Here's a company that can build them for you. This person is brilliant. They're just in the wrong position, so they should probably be over here. And no one has been fired by me coming in and pointing out that there's just a lot of, the way I look at it is 20% moves the needle, 80% is busy work. How can we get rid of the majority of this busy work over here so that we can focus back and make this 30% now, 40%, 50%. So that's kind of where my mind's at right now. So if there's anybody that, thinks that having an extra set of eyes and somebody to come in and, kind of peel back the layers of your business, not tell you how to run your business, that you're the experts in your business. All I'm is an unbiased person coming in, asking really good questions to help you get to what it is that you ultimately feel you and your team should be at. Whether it's been fun. And like I said, I ended up bringing stories and decks and AI into the life insurance space, and it's absolutely changed a vertical over here, and now it's starting to pop off, and I'm going into Vistage rooms and speaking with CEOs. I've got 3 coming up that I'm going down to do, and it's just been great. It's just I try to be the light bulb moment for people and not sell anything. And then if they come to me and say, hey, tell me more about what this would look like, then we can have that conversation. But I don't have an offer. I don't have anything to sell. Send me an email. I'll send you a free copy of my book. And then if you are a business owner or you're a person that feels stuck and you want to have a conversation, I do work with individuals, or have been lately. And every person's situation is different. So we can spend 15, 20, 30 minutes on a call and see if what I do can help you. And if it can't, no big deal. And I get to learn more about somebody else's business, so I'm always in the education mode, always.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that offer to everyone who's listening right now. And if you guys are interested in that, I highly encourage you to, take the imperfect action, reach out and see how that can benefit you. I know that there were several people that we were talking about before this event that took you up on the opportunity, and they gained a lot of clarity and positive momentum. So definitely take Rick up on that. But as we get near the end of the podcast here, one of the final questions I like to ask is, we live in a unique day and age where we have the ability to record a moment in time for future generations to see. What's the biggest or best piece of advice that you would leave for those future generations?
Don't let your past define your future. I went from addiction, incarceration, homelessness, to launching the career of Taylor Swift, to then ultimately, doing multiple 7 figures, and I didn't graduate high school. So, yeah, don't let your past define your future. I am absolute living proof that that's not the case.
That's amazing. Well, Rick, this has been one of my favorite episodes of the podcast, and I really appreciated your time today. There are a lot of gold nuggets that you dropped. So thank you, and I'll catch you later.
All right, and give that wife of yours a hug for me.
Will do. See ya.